Assalamu alaikum, everyone. All right, so today we will discuss how different graphs looks like depending on their equations. And slowly and gradually, we will cover each and every important shape of the graph. So we'll first begin with y is equals to mx plus c. So y is equal to mx plus c is the graph of a straight line. If the gradient is positive, the shape of straight line will be something like this. And if the graph of y is equal to mx plus c is such that gradient is negative, then it will be a negatively sloped graph. So m greater than 0 will look like this. M less than 0 will look like this. Next, y is equals to ax square. Y is equal to ax square denotes that it is a graph of a quadratic equation. So the graph of a quadratic equation will look something like this. Or it will look something like this. Depending on whether it is a maximum curve or a minimum curve. So if a is greater than 0, it is a minimum curve and it will have this shape. And if a is less than 0, it's a maximum curve and it will have this shape. I hope this is clear. Next, y is ax cube. So if a is greater than 0, the shape will be like this. And if a is less than 0, the shape will be something like this. You can either copy it right now or you can copy it afterwards after the session is done and watch the recordings and you can cover up and draw the graphs later. That's your choice. At this point in time, it's very important that you understand the shapes corresponding to each equation. Y is equal to a upon x. Y is a upon x will be something like this. If a is greater than 0, that is a is positive. If a is less than 0, it will be something like this. Y is equal to a upon x square. Y is equal to a upon x square will look something like this. If a is greater than 0, if a is less than 0, it will be something like this. A is less than 0 means a is negative. So if A is greater than 0, both parts of the graph will be above the x-axis. If A is less than 0, both parts of the graphs will be below the x-axis. Y is A power x will be something like this. And if there is a negative sign before A, the graph will be reflected about x-axis. These are some basic shapes that you should be aware of. You should know that the linear equation will result in a straight line. The quadratic equation will result in a curve. Cubic equation will also result in a curve that looks something like this. The reciprocal graph will look like this. The squared reciprocal graph will be like this. And the exponential growth graph looks something like this. Other than that, please be aware and be careful that if y is equal to ax square, it is something like this. If y is equal to ax square plus c, it will shift vertically upwards. This will be c. If y is equal to ax square minus c, it will shift vertically downwards. Yes, exponential graph goes to infinity. By looking at the equation, you need to identify कि अगर quadratic equation है तो उसका shape कैसे होगा. For example, x minus 2, x minus 3. So x is equal to 2 and x is equal to 3 are the roots. So the graph will be a minimum curve passing through the x intercepts 2 and 3. C indicates the vertical shifting, whether the graph is shifting above or going below the x-axis, depending on if it's plus c, it's a vertical shifting upwards, and if it is below c, if it is minus c, it is shifting the graph vertically downwards. Similarly, if on the other hand, it is something like this. There is a negative sign with one x and there is a positive sign with the other x. So if I expand this, it will turn out to be a maximum curve. X is equal to 2, x is equal to 3 होगा, but it will be a maximum curve. क्योंकि एक x नेगेटिव है, एक x पॉजिटिव है, जब ये ब्रैकेट्स एक्सपैंड होंगे, ब्रैकेट्स खोलेंगे, तो ऑटोमेटिकली ये एक मैक्सिमम कर्व बन जाएगा. सिमिलरली अगर ये 2 माइनस एक्स 3 माइनस एक्स होता, सो ये भी नेगेटिव एक्स है, ये भी नेगेटिव एक्स है, जब ब्रैकेट एक्सपैंड होंगे तो एक्स स्क्वायर के पहले पॉजिटिव साइन होगा, तो वंस अगेन ये मिनिमम कर्व ही होगा. सो प्लीज बी वेरी केयरफुल कि एक्स से पहले जो दोनों एक्स हैं उनसे पहले अगर सेम साइंस हैं, दोनों पॉजिटिव या दोनों नेगेटिव, तो ये मिनिमम कर्व्स हैं. और अगर दोनों ऑपोजिट साइंस हैं, एक पॉजिटिव एक नेगेटिव, तो मैक्सिमम कर्व होगा. प्लीज इस बात का ख्याल करिएगा. ऑल्सो please remember that whenever we are drawing graphs or sketching graphs, it is mandatory to label the axis, when drawing or sketching graphs. Always label the axis, label the graph, if the question mentions draw the graph, then you have to draw on graph paper. Mention the scale. If the question says sketch, it is not on graph paper, but to be made as accurately as possible. So I hope you all understood the different shapes relating to different equations. Because आपको अगर equations देख के shapes पता होंगे, तो आप easily बहुत सारी चीजें sort out कर सकते हैं. आपको आसानी रहेगी इस बात को realize करने में कि ग्राफ को कैसे प्लॉट करना है, कैसे ड्रॉ करना है, या ग्राफ का इवेंचुअली शेप कैसे बनेगा, या ग्राफ में अगर शिफ्टिंग हो रही है तो उसकी शिफ्टिंग कैसे मैनेज होगी. एग्जाम में यूजुअली आपको ग्राफ पेपर्स आपके आंसर स्क्रिप्ट के ऊपर बने हुए मिलते हैं, और प्रैक्टिस के लिए मेरी रिकमेंडेशन ये है कि सेंटीमीटर वाले ग्राफ्स यूज करने चाहिए जब आप ग्राफ ड्रॉ कर रहे हो. जी, मैक्सिमम कर्व में एक ही वैल्यू नेगेटिव होती है, लेस देन जीरो होती है, एंड मिनिमम में ए की वैल्यू पॉजिटिव या ग्रेटर देन 0 होती है. So this was a short session where I wanted you all to familiarize yourself with the different shapes corresponding to the different equations: linear, quadratic, cubic, reciprocal, and exponential graphs. So thank you, and I will see you all inshallah in the next class. Please make sure you have all copied all these graphs, and please remember to follow these instructions so that you can easily draw or sketch the graphs. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.